you started to hear rumbling Sunday morning. It was what was going down, and you still thought about the money piece, but after a while, you're like, all right, $7.5 million to Nebraska is not enough, not a lot of money, and they move forward with things. And I felt like even that day, the Shenander decision may have already been made by Mickey, but it would have been too much to do,
too quick,
and you needed this bye week. Because I did ask Trev, did anybody else get relieved of their duties besides Coach Frost that day? And he said no. That will be a question for Mickey, though. He's in charge now, and I think I think the 642 was probably what got Shenander fired as much as the Oklahoma. I mean, the Oklahoma game. I look at that game. Both sides were guilty. I mean, the offense had 14 possessions, 12 in a row with no points.
Right.
And many of those were 1 to 3 minute possessions.
Sure.
And you heard Mickey say yesterday, he's like, yeah, we got to do a better job of holding the ball. It's slowing it down. You can't put this Nebraska defense on the field for 14 possessions now.
No.
Right. I mean, that's any defense. I mean, college football is so much parity, and everybody has good athletes, because you got to think these kids that are even going to a Georgia Southern, even a North Dakota, or, you saw Southern Illinois beat Northwestern, and you see it almost every week, App State. The kids that are going to these colleges are still training like the kid. They're doing the same things that kids are going to Power 5, so they're coming in ready. And sometimes you face a team that's might be seasoned, like a Georgia Southern, and so they know how to play. With an elite
coach.
Right, with an elite coach, and they know how to play, and he's going to play to their strengths.
I mean, Clay Helton, you got to give that guy credit. I mean, he won a Rose Bowl.
Oh, yeah. Listen, Clay Helton is a guy who I have a ton of respect for. One, coaching at USC through the turmoil that how he got the job and how he essentially was always on the hot seat. Then he won the Rose Bowl, and then continued to coach and actually fielded a decent team when he was relieved. But he didn't have to go to a Georgia Southern.
No.
He could have took a coordinator job multiple times. He'd been up for other places.
He had Cliff Kingsbury on his staff for about a week.
Yep.
And then, but listen, but then he said, you know what? I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna really show you guys what I can do. And it's a leap of faith for him to go down there. It's more risk for him, because you could go down there and you have one bad recruiting class, guys aren't eligible or whatever, and you're done because they don't have the depth and numbers. And so, I think, we were talking before, and I want to ask AD this. I just felt like one of the things that's always really hurt Nebraska, and I really think this since Frank Solis was fired, and a little bit with Bo, but not as much, because I think Bo was real smart how he built his teams. He always had one or two bell cows on offense and one or two on defense. Now, when he was in the Big 12, it was DB heavy, so that was right up his alley. But he always had two guys, and he always kept two in the chamber too.
They could win with 4 up front. That was always the key with the Bo defense.
Right, but he always had a rusher, and then he had an eraser, whether it's a safety or Levante David. Now, he fell into Levante David. He takes credit for it because he ain't start him. And I remember talking to Bo, and he's like, oh, he's swimming, he's making mistakes. I said, Bo, my man's making 16 tackles, man. Start just whatever defense is he messing up on, that's the defense you need to call.
Right.
Because Levante go get the ball. That's it. Ready, break.
Right.
But I think that since Frank is left, I think the missing piece has been, and some of it obviously with I-Course is the AD, and how he became AD was just, it was like a day like today, and just like, oh, Nebraska has a new AD.
Yeah.
Is the inability to handle adversity and adjust like on the fly. You can see it in games, but you can see it also in administration.
Yeah.
So I want to know what you guys think about that, because I think sometimes if you can't do that from, say, like when we had I-Course, right, where there's a disconnection between the AD and the coach, then how can you adjust? Because you're supposed to be able to go to your superior, and then you leave somebody out there in the darkness. So tell me what you guys think about that.
This goes – I was just talking to Sean and both before the air. This has been a hard 2 weeks, man. I mean, and people who are not Nebraska fans just don't understand it. It's like it's just a football. It was not just football to us. Nebraska football is the porch light of our state to the rest of the country. We have no other D1 team here. We have no pro teams in any other sport here. That's why we're so heavily invested in it. And, Jay, you bring up a good point. This goes all the way back to the unceremonious way that Coach Solich was let go. We have not recovered since. Of course, we had those glimmer years. Bo had those. Yeah, those Bo. And the thing about Bo rarely lost to a team in lesser talent. It was either teams he lost to were equal or better talent than we lost to. He didn't. We did peel one up with McNeese State that time, where Ramir had that long run. Yeah, but other than that, we didn't have a lot of hiccups. Jay, we're Nebraska right now, and we have them for a long time. We don't have an identity. We don't have an identity on either side of the ball. And it's regardless of who was in it, regardless of who the coaches were. I mean, we can go from Callahan. We can go from now Bo. We obviously had defense, but throw Bo out of it. Callahan had no identity other than we just air the ball out. But we were playing catch up half the game.
Yeah. You get good stats. You get those are empty stats.
Yeah, those are empty stats. When
Chuck
people
and
say
duck.
against when KU hung 70 or something like
Well,
that.
but you got to remember that was the defense's fault.
Yeah.
The offense was Callahan always had good
Always had a
offense.
good offense.
Right.
And it was either one or the other. We couldn't just get them
Mesh.
all on the same page. Yeah, the mesh.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Like you
Cosgrove
said.
had it figured out in 06 with Stu Bradley, Jay Moore,
Yes.
and Carricker. I mean, that was
Yes.
a good defense.
That was a great defense.
And then the next year, those guys were gone,
Right.
and they just didn't. They weren't built for it. And the Big 12 had that record year that year, and his scheme was not ready for the Big 12 07.
Sure.
Right, but see, you're making my point right there. The ability to adjust to your talent
Right.
is a hidden gem with coaches. And here's
Yeah.
why. If you watch Alabama this year, against Texas, they struggled a little bit. And one of the biggest things that people don't understand is what really Nick Saban did two things. He went from a run heavy offense, just beat you up with multiple backs, and then he brought in Sark and Lane Kiffin to get a little bit of spread into it.
Right.
Didn't miss his principles, but he has the ability to do that. Then Sark and those other coaches brought in the vertical passing game. So now he can take his offense and his team anywhere. The thing that they're missing this year is somebody to take the top off. So now Nick Saban even said if you kind of listen to him or listen between the coach speak, they're still trying to figure out how to be an explosive offense with a new personnel. That's why what I think is missing at Nebraska, whether it's offense, defense, you can say a little bit with special teams, but I think, like I said, you take Bo out of it. You can talk about Cosgrove. You can even talk about, on the flip side, with Callahan. If you know the defense is struggling, then your offense has to change.
Right.
And so I think the ability to adjust is going to be huge, and it's something that you have to embrace. It's almost like you go your main game plan in the left pocket, your backup in the right pocket, and the two back pockets you got emergency.
Little mixture of everything.
Yeah.
Sean, let me ask you this. We'll bring it back to 2 weeks ago. When did you get the call there was going to be a press conference?
Noon. I had about 30 minutes heads up before it actually came out. But I knew.
Take us through that. Take us through that day, if you would.
I went to church at 9:30, and
did you say a prayer for some of the coaches? Dear Lord, I hope they make it to Monday.
Priest Father Broviak, I walked in and I said, "It's going to be an interesting day, Father." And
did you say, "Hey, can I get a couple of holy water so I can go sprinkle some of these coaches because they need it?"
But then there was somebody I knew in there that was close to Frost at the same church service, and that person I saw leave early, and people don't usually leave early, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah, unless they got to go to the bathroom, unless it's an emergency.
Yeah. And I said, this is interesting because, and then I heard some things about a meeting and things happening, but it happened. Yeah, just there's no easy way to do it.
Right.
I mean, and the way how it all went down, and I think we were so caught up in that $7.5 million buyout change in October 1st. But I thought about it more. Big Noon Kickoff was here last week. How could you, with a straight face, have rolled Scott Frost out there and say, go talk to Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson and Urban Meyer and Leinart and Bush and act like you're going to be
wrong.
Nothing's wrong. I mean, I just don't think that would have played out very well. And that's worth to me a lot more than $7.5 million to kind of turn the page and, granted, the game didn't go very well for Nebraska.
But it changed the narrative.
Yeah.
It changed the narrative.
And if that would have been Scott Frost's game, that would have
been all over him and the focus of that.
And the stadium would have been nasty.
Right.
Oh, it would have been ruthless.
So, hey, Sean, I always wanted to ask, so when things like this happen, obviously with Frost or Shenander or even prior, like Mike Riley and all that stuff, are you like a doctor that's on call? You could be with your wife and kids. And
pretty much.
Yeah, you could be at the Lincoln Zoo. You're like, hey, honey, hey, Uber home.
So I went in the office like right away the last 2 Sundays, like go to church, go right in the office. And I'm the one that calls Sipple and Robin Washad, and I'm like, Sip, Frost is getting fired. Like, get down to the office now. And Sipple's like, what? We're hearing that. I go, just trust me. Get down here right now, And so,
trust me.
Like those are the hardest days on this job is like when you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And, when you like when Mike Riley got fired on the day after Black Friday, like, it's like, okay, like we're going to get down there and we know he's going to get fired.
That was coming.
Yeah. Bob Diaco,
Bill Callahan.
Yeah.
When I remember about Bill Callahan, they played on Friday in Colorado. It was like a 10 a.m. kick because of the mountain kick time out there. So we all flew back, and then I was back at Memorial Stadium like 6 or 7 in the morning, and Osborne fired him like at 7 in the morning, and he drove off, and then that was it. You know,
good morning.
Yeah, it was
a wrap.
We've been through too many of these things. I mean, like the Bo one, I always was told that Bo, when he went to meet with Icor, they just won. You know, they went 9 wins. He didn't think he was going to get fired. He thought it was kind of like, hey, let's figure this out meeting. And then he's like, no, we're not figuring this out. I'm making a move on you right now.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what really, I guess, quote unquote, set Bo off. Now I will say this about that situation. I know when Bo wanted some support, it wasn't there from Icor.
Yeah, he was going to get 2 recruiting staff hires.
Right. Yeah, or was supposed to. And then it kind of, he kept dangling it out there, pulling it back, dangling out there.
But you won't get to pick these hires.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So then, you know, it's kind of like I'm helping you, but I'm really hurting you at the same time. So, you know, I think right now, you know, I wanted to ask what your feeling is. You know, how does something like this affect recruiting? You know, moving forward, as Mickey said, they're operating as they're going to be here, and they're going to leave the place in a better place than they found it.
It's challenging with recruiting right now. You know, the coaches will go on the road this week. Now, you can't make in-home visits right now or anything like that. You know, the only time coaches can go in the living room is starting the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and you get about 2 or 3 weeks in December, and then about 2 weeks in January, where you can visit seniors in the home. And that's it.
That's it.
So like Dylan Raiola never could have been visited by Scott Frost, or, you know, like in the home, because of the recruiting rules that were out there. So like there, you know, like this right now, you'll go to these games and you could bump into a guy and say, hey, what's up, Jay? Good job, Jay. And that's what you're allowed to do. That's technically.
Or you can sit there and stare at him.
And and
just, is he really 6'2"? What do you think, AD? He looks about 6'1.5". Sean, what do you think?
Meanwhile, this kid's going stranger danger. Who is this staring at me?
So they'll go out to a few games. I'm guessing Barrett or somebody's going to go out to watch that tight end from Ainsworth. He's a 2024. He's got like Wisconsin and Iowa and Nebraska.
He's a big kid.
He's playing in Chambers on Thursday. So I bet they'll have someone there. Pierce, Nebraska, they've not gone up and seen him yet. And then Mickey's going to go down to Louisiana and go see.
I think Monroe, New Orleans is where he's heading, right?
Yeah, Moreno plays Monroe. Or trying to think, AJ Allen's high school plays O'Marion Miller's high school. So hopefully maybe he can run into some people with AJ Allen too, because you know we were talking about this. Like a guy like AJ Allen, he's played 4 great games. He's now hurt for the year. How many DMs do you think he's going to be getting?
Oh yeah.
I mean, well, I mean, depends on. Applewhite's still here. I think he's pretty good. I think that here's the thing that people don't understand, and this is what these young kids need to understand. If Mickey recruited you and you have a good relationship with Applewhite and Applewhite's here, you need to stay here. Yeah, you get the DMs, but you're still going to go somewhere else and have to compete
and start over
again. 4 games isn't nothing. That's tiddly poo. But he's played well enough to do it. But at the end of the day, you know, you got to kind of pump the brakes. It's always nice to be wanted, okay? But it's also better to be appreciated. And you want a relationship with the coach, and you're going to start over. And so, yeah, I'm sure, you know, people are going to try to, you know, poach off the roster. But that's why it's going to be so huge for these next 8 games, in my opinion. Well, you're going to get a good evaluation of Mickey if he can do the job long term. And you're going to get a good evaluation of the other coaches as well if there's a potential other head coach.
Right.
So there's 2 dates to watch here. Number 1, December 5th.
Right.
That's the first day the portal opens. That's opening day of deer hunting season.
Right.
You know,
it's called Sean, we renamed it the Vortex. It's like the Vortex off of Star Wars. You know, when you went into a warp speed, that's it. You instantly go into warp speed into the unknown, and who knows if you come out the other end. I mean, that's what it is.
That day is going to be nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Twitter tweet updates and roster updates,
right?
But then you technically have 30 days from when your coach is fired to enter the portal. So Nebraska players
could enter the portal in a couple weeks.
Still have about 2 weeks to go in the portal if they want to. But what does it matter?
Yeah, right now. Yeah. But the 5th is when it opens up to everybody.
Yeah, and and then the other thing you got to wonder, how many guys at game 4 that have a red shirt could say, I'm going to red shirt now and sit out. Is that something to think?
You mean freshmen?
Or any player that maybe hasn't red shirted in their career?
Oh, yeah.
Like that's something, you know, that could be out there I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's something to watch next week.
Because they up until basically next week, the next
Indiana
game,
yeah.
and they can make that decision.
And they can say, Coach, I'm in a red shirt now. I'm going to kind of.
But Nebraska already played 4 games though.
Yeah, after 4, so you can play 4.
Okay, but they've already played 4.
Right, so that's the cutoff.
That's it. So they can't play another game. So this off week doesn't count. But I'm saying that they can't if they can't play the Indiana game, it's off the books.
I mean, it's it's a lot of what ifs, and we'll get into it in this next segment. We got 3 more minutes, but how important is it to keep your best recruiters on a staff, regardless if you're the incumbent with Mickey, or if Mickey keeps the job and the head coach for the foreseeable future, or a new coach? How important is that?
I think with just the roster management that's going to have to go on to retain players, you're going to have to keep probably 1 to 3 coaches.
Right. For sure that first year, right?
I mean, Mickey, Applewhite, Bush are the main priority guys. I mean, Raiola possibly. But, it just depends on who you hire and what they want. Yeah. But I think 1 or 2 have to be kept.
Or you're starting over.
Otherwise, you could have 40 guys go in the portal.
Right. And that pretty much you're done. You're almost like on.
You're starting at ground zero.
Yeah, you're pretty much on. Like SMU. You're just starting. Your roster is gutted. And real short, here's what I always wanted to ask you: this is how big of a crapshoot is it getting a guy out of the portal or from high school? Because it seems to me everybody thinks the portal is like you're getting a bunch of gems, but it looks like you're getting a bunch of like fool's gold, coming out of there, because there's always something deeper than why you're in the portal majority of the time.
And you find out later because you lift up the hood and kind of like, wait a minute, I didn't see this before you got here.
Right. Like, look at AJ Allen, high school guy. I mean, if you can find that kind of guy, and Anthony Grant was a JUCO guy that nobody wanted.
Right.
If it was at New Mexico's military.
Well, he went to Florida State,
right?
And his mother passed away, and had to step away and deal with his personal, just what he was battling.
Absolutely.
And then went to Garden City. Yeah. Had to leave there. Goes to New Mexico military. Won the National Player of the Year. It was between us and like Arkansas State.
Oh wow!
And so they didn't even have to use NIL to get Anthony Grant here. Right. It was just a guy that needed, like a spot opened up, and I think Steve Cooper, the GA or analyst, was the one that stood on the table for him. So think about where this team would be without those 2 guys.
Right.
Brian Applewhite brought AJ Allen, and Steve Cooper brought in Anthony Grant.
Right.
Because Allen was committed to TCU first, wasn't he? And he made that move after Applewhite came up here.
Correct? And I know when they were looking at the running backs coach, they really wanted a guy that could bring somebody with a player. And then that was AJ Allen. And he's probably the best high school guy they added to the roster.
Right. But, as far as like, again, like the recruiting, in your experience or what you hear, what's more appealing to coaching staffs, recruiting? Because you hear some coaching staffs like, I just love the portal because they view it as easier. There might be some tape. Or do you think coaches want to get a high school guy that maybe they can kind of really develop?
Well, I think if you're Brent Venables at Oklahoma, he knows he's got lots of time right now. He's going primarily high school. He's taking the Dabo Sweeney approach.
Right.
He wants to build.
But here, where you have a gun to your head right now, like it's like, and you had some recruiting misses and developmental misses and other things happen. That's why Nebraska had to do what they did. And it was a big time boom or bust strategy, as we now know. I mean, they added some. Casey Thompson's a good player.
Yeah.
Right.
Trey Palmer,
absolutely.
Marcus Washington, good players.
IGC.
But on defense, O'Shawn hasn't done what you would think. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He just hasn't done what you would think.
But what was the thought of he was going to do?
Well, he had 10 sacks in the Big 12. So you thought that he could get to a quarter.
2 years ago, right? Well, what did he do last year?
4, right?
Right. So I always add 1 or 10 plus 4. 7 is the max. Get what I'm saying? He could sue. Now, you ain't getting many pass rush attempts when you're down 35 points.
Right.
And so there's a lot that goes to it as well.
Tommy Hill, I thought, was going to be better. I mean, I think we all did. Travis Fisher, for him, Travis Fisher on the record said that if Tommy Hill plays with potential, his name could be on this stadium someday.
Right.
And Fish doesn't typically say
he
so.
He's pretty reserved. Yeah, he's pretty reserved.
Yeah. I mean, I usually didn't used to like to deal with what ifs, because that's like a lot of potential.